That's what I was the worst at, was technical interviews. I would get so nervous, and I forget everything that I had ever learned.
Oh
That's
god.
I'm like, I don't in my head, I'm like, I don't know, like, I'm so nervous, no thoughts are coming out, you know? So that was always the most challenging part. My first Bloomberg interview was in June. It was in June, but I didn't get it. They're like, "Oh, we
Oh,
like her, she's not the right fit for our team." I was like, "Oh, that's too bad." But my manager's like, "Don't be discouraged, don't give up." So I made a point of just like, "You know what? I'm just gonna trust the process here." But then come October or November, Kelly reached out to me and said, "Oh, like, Bloomberg, they asked specifically for you. They have another position open they think you might be a good fit for." So then I interviewed, with them, I think, like, maybe beginning of November. And then we immediately hit it off, and that's how I got hired at Bloomberg.
welcome back to the Custom Journeys podcast. I'm Andrew Baines. This show is all about introducing you all to successful Black and Latino STEM professionals, and then also giving you guys the tips, the tools, and the resources to be successful. I'm very excited about today's guests, Catherine Alexis Booker. She is a software engineer at Bloomberg, and she recently went through the Catalyte program. We've talked about tech apprenticeship programs and different opportunities for you guys to break into tech. So she's going to kind of talk about her experience through the Catalyte program and then how she got into software engineering. Catherine has a background actually in communications and Spanish, which just shows that you don't necessarily have to have a technical background to get into software engineering. So, Catherine, thank you so much for joining today. How are you doing?
I'm good, Andrew, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for
Thanks.
reaching out.
Yeah, absolutely. It was easy to find you, I must say. You've been in like 5 of Catalyte's videos on YouTube and stuff. So I have no problem tracking you down, but thanks for taking out time to hop on.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah,
Cool.
it was a really great experience, and I tried to get involved as much as I could. So that's why there's so many, like, interviews or pictures, like, anytime they needed someone, I'm like, "Oh, I'm available. I'd like to be involved." So I guess it's working out.
Cool, cool, cool. All right. And so you double majored in college, right? Communications and Spanish. You gonna hit us with some Espanol this morning?
I'm not, but I did major in intercultural communications and Spanish. I went to a school out in Napa Valley. Well, it's funny because I think my software journey, like, actually started a long time ago, but I didn't realize it. I did, like, a Digi Girls camp. It's a Microsoft camp for girls in middle school. So I did this Digi Girls camp, and I guess I was interested in code, but I didn't pursue it. I think when I finished high school, I didn't even really think of that as an option for me. So I went with something that I was more comfortable with, which was communications. I wanted to work with the State Department, so I think it was a good choice. But yeah, so I went to school for intercultural communications. I did a year abroad in Spain, and that was great, really, really fun. But yes, in college, I didn't do any coding whatsoever. My first time seeing code was the first day of the Catalyte program.
All right, nice. So let's go ahead and jump into it then, because like I get a lot of requests from people that are trying to break into tech, and a lot of people don't have a technical background at all, but they're like, "Hey, I've heard software engineers get paid a lot of money." So you say you didn't know any code like going into it. So did you do like any kind of preparation beforehand, or did you just cold apply, like only knowing communications in Spanish? And I saw you were like a receptionist before that, so no code at all. You just jumped in cold. How'd that kind of go?
Yeah, I just jumped in cold. It after college my college experience was pretty difficult. Like, the first couple years were good, Spain was good, but then the last couple of years, it was kind of a challenging time in life, and when I finished school, I just didn't really feel like myself, and I didn't know what direction I wanted to go in next, and as I was looking for communication jobs, I was reading the description, and I was like, this is not for me. I don't wanna do this." But this is now what I know. I did hospitality in, college as well, so I did have a hospitality background, but no, I just knew that I wanted to learn how to code. I finished school in 2019. So 2020, the pandemic hit. So I was like, well, if I'm gonna learn how to code, like, I might as well learn right now. I don't want to do these other communication jobs. So let me pivot to this. So I just started Googling, like, coding opportunities, how to learn how to code, training, boot camps, things of that nature. And I found Catalyt on Indeed. So I only Like, honestly, I only looked, like, in 2 places. Like, I saw a Berkeley opportunity, but it was, like, really expensive. I was like, let me just keep looking, like, keep my options open." And then I got an Indeed alert for Catalyte. So, it honestly was, like, not that hard. Just put that alert on for software engineering, and it just popped up one day, like, I just, like, when I think about the whole journey, I just feel so, like, blessed and so grateful because it just, like, everything just weaved into each other and worked. So, I saw the opportunity, and it said that they teach people how to code. They were like, "You don't need any experience." Like, that's their whole thing. You don't need
Mm.
experience, you don't need a traditional background. You just need to show that you have an aptitude to learn. So I applied, and then you take a test, which it's not a coding test, it's more of like an SAT type of test. And there's like English questions, math questions, critical thinking questions, things of that nature. And that was probably like maybe over an hour, like you're testing for a while. But I apparently scored pretty well on it because they reached out to me like, hey, you scored well. We want to set up an interview. And then a few months later, I had the interview. And then a few months later, I got accepted into the program. And you would think during this time that I would start prepping for the program, but I did not. I did not. They even sent like an email out like the week before the program, like, hey, take a look at this. And I remember I didn't look at it until the night before, which was, I don't know why. I don't know why. Maybe a bit of procrastination. But yeah, so first day, just jumped right into it. But the program was so good that I was able to do that and still be successful. The program is it was good. I started September 2020. I finished May 2021, but I did take some time off in between then for different personal reasons. But yeah, it was an intense program, but they have like this formula, I suppose, for training where they're really able to help connect with people who don't have this coding background and somehow put it in a way where we can understand even without going to college and still be successful at it.
So 9 months is about the amount of time it took you to finish. Is it self-paced or do you have to kinda go at their pace?
So it's a bit of both. So it normally doesn't take 9 months. I did have to take time off. I think normally it's like 5, 6 months or so. Some people, like, go through it so fast because it can be self-paced. There was someone I knew who started probably when I was, like, 4 months in and finished, like, within, like, a month and a half, 2 months, like,
What?
blazed through it, yeah. Um, so they do this formula where you are, like, going to classes. We have like PowerPoint presentations. You're going to classes and then they give you assignments. The assignments are really where you're doing a lot of the learning. So a lot of it is self-learning. They are they are there for support and they do give you the tools. You know, if you
Mhm.
have any questions, reach out. That was their thing, like ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. But a lot of it, you're on your own, struggling with the code, trying to figure it out. And they do have deadlines for when these things are due. So maybe the deadline is like a week from now, and some people finish it the night of, and some people take the full week or even a few more days after, and they might give you an extension for whatever reason if they see you're really trying. But in the program, if you're not keeping up, at least with the basic pace of it, you can be let go from the program.
Oh,
So,
wow, okay.
yeah, if they just feel like 'cause it's a relationship, they want to benefit you. They also are a company, right? So they do wanna train people who can perform well in this area. So if they feel like it's not a good relationship, there is a potential of being let go. But that usually happens early on, and yeah, they do everything they can to help you through the program as well. So I wouldn't worry about that, like, if you hear that. That stressed me out the entire time. Up until the last week, I was like no, up until last month, I was like, "Man, like, they're gonna let me go." But don't let that stress you out. They do everything they can to help you.
Okay, nice. So real quick, let's go back to like the application process. So you said there's like two assessment, like there's one SAT style assessment, and I think prior to that you said, hey, you have to like do a test. It's not a coding test or anything, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's the assessment.
Oh, that's the so just one
Exactly.
assessment.
It's
Okay,
just one assessment. It's, like, very specifically created to know if you're going to do well in the program.
okay,
There's, like, a
gotcha.
whole that works on creating that test to get an idea if you're gonna do well in the program. And for me, I would say it's pretty accurate because a lot of people get into the program and do well through it.
Nice. Would you say there's anything that people could do to kinda help prepare for that assessment or to help improve their chances of getting into the program? Is it like, "Hey, you need to bust out your SAT, prep paperwork," or something like that? What would you say people could do to kinda help prepare?
No, I do relate it to the SAT just because it's in that format, but I don't know if there's anything you could do. I think I'm not sure there's anything you could do
Yeah.
specifically to prep for the test. I don't remember any specific questions, so it's not like you could go through your SAT book and
Yeah.
be prepared. Um and also, I don't think they're also the way they measure the test is not just like, did they get the question right? There's other factors that go into how they measure how you're taking the test. So it's not just, did you do well on the test, but how did you take the test? So that's part of it too. I think if you really wanted to prep for it, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I remember I struggled on the math portion. So
Well, even that is good to know because I think math is like the one subject where a lot of people struggle and they kind of feel like, hey, if they struggle in math, they're not meant to be an engineer. So even that like transparency is beneficial. Talking about the program a little bit more. So you say you knew a guy that went through it in like a month and a half, or like is that what you said?
okay, I might be exaggerating.
But it was
I
like really
For
accelerated
me, it
pace.
felt because I had been in it for long, for me, it felt like, "Man, he really got through this." It probably was like 3 months or
Okay.
something, but I remember that he did it very quickly, and you can do that. Like, if you get the assignment and you finish it the night of, great, you pick up the next one,
Oh,
and
word. Okay.
some of it you do have to keep at the pace
Yeah.
of what the instructors are doing, so you couldn't finish it, like, in a week because there's a lot more that goes into it, like, they're also teaching you, like, the Scrum Agile methodology, and they're trying to
Okay.
prepare you for having a job and not just, like, learning to code. So, there's, like, soft skills lessons as well as hard skills, so you couldn't just do it, like, in 1 month, but he did it as quick as possible. I think there's, like, a record for finishing it quickly, but I don't remember what it is.
Well, that's good to know. Are you getting paid during the time of the program or only after the program?
You're not. So it is unpaid. You sign a contract to work with Catalyte for 2 years in return for this unpaid training because it is really
Okay.
good training, and they do pour a lot into you. I got a lot of support technically, but also just emotionally. They're really there for you, and that's I think that really benefited me, as I was doing the program, but it's unpaid, so I know that doesn't work for everyone. That I would say that can be tricky, can be a barrier for some because, like, I was in a position where I was very blessed to be at home during the pandemic.
Mhm.
So I was with my family, so I didn't have to pay rent. So without that, I don't know exactly what I would have done because I remember I worked part-time through about half of the program,
Yeah.
and then for me, it got too difficult. I needed to give all of my time to learning, so I ended up just not working at all, just praying about it and just like, "Okay, let's stop working and just try and figure this out." But I know for some that can be a barrier, so it is unpaid, so the quicker you do it, that's to your benefit, but it may take you 5 months, so you would wanna plan for that.
What technology stack did you guys learn like during the program? Like HTML, JavaScript, CSS, what?
Mhm. So I will say the program has evolved a bit since I was in it. So I know it's a little different now. I'm not sure exactly what they're learning at this moment because I know they're incorporating more cloud technologies where I didn't have that when I was in the program. But when I was in the program, we learned JavaScript, yeah, JavaScript, CSS, HTML. We learned React was kind of our front end framework that we spent a lot of time with, and then Java for the back end, and then also SQL. I think those were the big three. SQL, Java, and React. But then they gave you bits and pieces kind of other languages as we were going throughout the program. But they really focus on teaching you how to learn so that you can, whatever you're presented with, right? Because after the program, they want you to get a job, but they know not every single, they try to teach you languages that are popular, that are being used, and they keep up too. But once they put you out there, they want you to be able to see something and ramp up quickly. So they do prioritize teaching you how to learn. I think they're still learning React in the cycle now. React is a good language. But yeah, so big emphasis on JavaScript.
I like the part where they teach you how to learn because there's so many different technology, different languages to learn, and they're always creating new ones. So it's important to not just learn one particular one, but learn how to learn on your own moving forward.
Exactly.
Yeah. So after the program, so like in your case, like after those 9 months, then you worked with Catalyte for 2 years. How does that kind of work? Are you working with Catalyte, or are they kind of like you subcontract into another company? How does that work, and what were you doing during that time?
So I will emphasize that the program has evolved a bit. So I just am not totally sure if this is how it is right now.
Yeah.
But my experience, so you graduate from the cycle, you're put on what is called the bench, which is just a place for developers who graduate the cycle but aren't yet on a client. So because what they do is you are contracting for other companies. So they work with other
Okay.
companies who are looking for apprentice level developers and you go on interviews. So when you get out of the cycle, you have like an engagement manager. Is that what they call it? You have a manager right when you get out of the cycle who was like, her name's Christine. Well, that was my manager. She was the best. She helped me with my resume. So, oh yeah. So right when you get out, they're helping you with your resume. They're helping you with your interview skills. We did a lot of interview prepping together, helping to get you ready for this interview that's going to be coming up soon. But you don't know when they're coming, right? So it could be like, oh, we heard that, so and so is looking for an apprentice. We're gonna put you up for it. It's in 2 weeks. But it could be like next week, or it could be like, we're not sure, but start practicing your coding skills because a lot of times there's technical interviews. So this bench time is really just like for continuing to learn. They do have like some additional learning programs while you're on the bench that you can do to help keep your skills sharp. And they also give you the time to study other things. So I remember I started to look into AWS while I was on the bench waiting for an interview to come up. But the idea is an interview does come up, you interview for it, you get it, then you start working with that company as a contractor. You're still with Catalyte, you're still in the apprenticeship program, but your every day is with this other company as a contractor.
Okay. Is that how you got introduced to Bloomberg? Because I know you're at Bloomberg now. Okay.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So what's funny is, so when I first got out of the cycle, this was like May, my first Bloomberg interview was in June. It was in June, but I didn't get it. They're like, "Oh,
Uh,
we like her, but she's not the right fit for our team." I was like, "Oh, that's too bad." So I remember being like, "Oh, that's too bad," but my manager's like, don't be discouraged, don't give up." So I made a point of just like, "You know what? I'm just gonna trust the process here, trust the plan, and just keep moving forward." And it turned out to be for me, it was a good thing because that year, 2021, that year I struggled a lot. 'Cause we had a few deaths in our family that were really big, so that summer was full of, like, a lot of grief, and I just think about if I was working at the time, if I was at Bloomberg at the time where all this happened, I really would not have been able to do a good job or represent myself in the way that I wanted to. Um, but then come October or November, Kelly reached out to me and said, "Oh, like, Bloomberg, they asked specifically for you. They have another position open they think you might be a good fit for." So then I interviewed, with them, I think, like, maybe beginning of November, and we immediately hit it off, and that's how I got hired at Bloomberg as a contractor on the same team that I am hired now as a full-time employee. So I've been with that team for the last, like, I guess full year now, a year and a
okay.
little.
I think that's a great point. I think a lot of times we get so caught up in like our own timing and like when we want things to
Mhm.
happen according to like our vision board and like the goals we've
Right.
outlined. But I don't know. I think like whether you believe it's God's timing or whatever, I think it all kind of works out in the end. So I think I'm glad it worked out the way it did because that could be a lot, being a new hire and then having to deal with a lot of grief and loss in the family. That can be
Mhm.
tough. And sorry for your loss as well.
Yeah.
'Cause I know that's challenging. What was that interview process like? Because I know that can be very stressful for some people. I know some people that are finishing up some boot camps and they're like reaching out to different people trying to get advice on how to prepare for the interview. So What was the interview process like for you at Bloomberg?
So their interview process for me, I think it's a little bit different because I was coming from Catalyte, which is also the nice thing about doing it with a company like this because they have a relationship already with the client. For me, I remember the first interview was 2 interviews. Um, it might have been 3, but 2, like, was more of a get to know you. They do ask you some technical questions just to kinda gauge where you are, although they know that you are at an apprentice level. So they're not, like, grilling you on super, complex ideas, but they are just trying to get an idea, like, do they know anything about code? And then the second interview was a technical interview. And so in the technical interview, they give you a problem to solve, just like you would see, like, if you were on, like, Leet Code or Code Academy. It was virtual at the time, so you just do that on camera. I think that's probably pretty standard for technical interviews. Throughout the whole cycle, I think that's what I was the worst at, was technical interviews. I would get so nervous, and I forget everything that I had ever learned. Can't be
Oh
asked.
god.
I'm like, I don't in my head, I'm like, I don't know, like, I'm so nervous, no thoughts are coming out, you know? So that was always the most challenging part was that technical interview when they're watching you code because you're sharing the screen. So they see what you're typing, and it's so nerve-wracking, but I mean, it worked out. So I think that's what people can expect is probably an interview in just in general, because they did prep us a lot for technical interviews. Just in general, I think what you can expect is they're going to want to do like a get to know you, but they're also going to want to do a technical interview. The problems, I think they were like easy level and medium level. Like
Okay.
they don't go too hard because they know your level, but they also want to like push you a little bit, see where you are.
Gotcha. No, I can only imagine like the amount of stress and pressure, like of somebody looking over your shoulder basically and be like, what the hell is she doing? Like, why is she
Yeah, that's
taking
how
so long?
that's how you feel, like, they're like, "Silly, like, why did I do that?" But they're honestly not, like, you have to remind yourself that they're here to find an employee, they're not here to judge you as a person. They're just trying to find someone who's a good fit for your team, and you wanna find a place where you're a good fit too. So, you just gotta trust the process and do your best, take a deep breath, and
Yeah.
just do your best.
What do you think kind of set you apart or helped like seal the deal for you during that interview process? Because it seemed like you left a good impression on the first round, like back in June, even though you didn't get that job at that time. So what do you think kind of helped you leave a mark and make a good impression on the hiring managers?
That's a good question. For me personally, I feel like it was just God's timing for me. Because when I
Yeah.
joined this team, I've been on this team, I love this team. It's like dream job for me right now. So for me, I feel like it's God's timing, but, I'm gonna have to say my personality. I'm gonna have to say it must have just shone through because I don't know, they asked for me back, later that year. It's funny because in the cycle too, I always felt like my coding skills were not that great. And just because it takes me a bit to learn something, like, I might get the information, but I need to digest it for a little bit and like, work through it. So when you tell me the first day, I'm like, "Okay." Like, it's still gonna take me a little bit after that. So I'd always feel like I was learning slowly, but they really liked me too in the cycle, so they were willing to help me. So I was like, "That's fine with me, like, if you wanna help me, I wanna be helped." So
Nice.
I guess I don't know, I guess they just like my personality, like, thought it would be a good fit for their team.
That's a good point not to like skim over that because I think people need to realize that we're dealing with people at the end of the day, right? And so people are more likely to hire people that they like and that they enjoy being with. And I think they can kind of see that coming through during your interview process and kind of envision like, okay, yeah, she's still learning, of course. She's an apprentice level engineer, but she has a really cool personality. We think she would mesh really well with the team that we're building. So kudos to you. Can you kind of give us a ballpark range of like what people can expect to make after they complete the program, but then they're actually employed by Catalyte, but being staffed at a different company?
So I don't think I'm able to give exact figures, but just in terms of a range. So when you're employed Catalyte, you are in an apprenticeship program. So do not expect to be making what a software engineer makes. So let's say the market rate for starting is 80,000, which I think it is for a junior developer. You're not making that. You're making much less than that in the apprenticeship program. You are making more than minimum wage. We're definitely
Okay.
making more than minimum wage, but you're also not making market rate. So I would say you're right in between a minimum wage paying job and the starting salary for a software engineer, which is maybe 75 or $80,000.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So it's livable. It is livable, but it's you definitely for those 2 years, you're taking a pay cut, if you would, except that you're still learning, right? So,
Yeah.
for me, it was worth it because they were still providing me so much support, technical and emotional, while I was going through the program, that for me, it was totally worth it.
I appreciate you kind of breaking that down a little bit. I think that gives you at least a ballpark of like, hey, what to kind of expect. Let me ask you one more question about the program. For somebody who's thinking about making this pivot, going through a program like Catalyte or something else, what would you say has been like the most challenging part of making this transition? Because from college, you're like lined up to be either in hospitality or communications and Spanish and all that stuff to now software engineering. What would you say has been the toughest part about making the transition, and how'd you
Right.
overcome that?
Right, that's a good question because it was a tough transition. Because not only did I not know anything about code, but I didn't know anything about the software engineering industry. I really was very novice when I entered, and so everything was new. So I think the things that helped me most in the cycle were, number 1, asking questions. I was not I mean, I asked questions, but I wasn't a big question asker prior to Catalyte because I didn't wanna look like I didn't know the answer already. So I was that type of person like, "Oh, I hear something I don't know. Okay, whatever, I'm gonna Google it on my own later." But in the cycle, you can't do that. If you I think in this world in general, if you hear something you don't know, you should just ask, like, what is that? Or don't be afraid to ask questions and don't be afraid to feel like silly or inadequate because you don't know the answer. I think that for me was a really big hurdle to get past, but they would push you like, you gotta ask us. And they sometimes they purposely would not tell you something so that you would have to ask them the question.
Mm,
They wanted you to get in the habit of like, you don't have all the details. You need to ask somebody for help or for clarification. Clarifying questions was what they really emphasized. So that was a big thing for me to learn, and it was a good thing because in life, it has helped me. Because even prior to just coding, in life, I wouldn't ask questions. If I was struggling, I'm just gonna have to figure it out on my own, right? I'm not reaching out for help. And now I feel like I'm different. Now if I need something, I feel more comfortable saying like, if I don't have all the answers, that's not a reflection of my intelligence or how good a person I am or how well I'm doing in life. It's just simple. I don't have all the answers. Like I'm human and I shouldn't expect myself to have all the answers. So I think going into a program like this, you have to accept that you are not going to know everything. And sometimes you won't even know 10% of what is going on. Like when I first got to Bloomberg, like, the first few weeks, the conversations they were having, I maybe knew, like, literally maybe knew 20% of the words they were saying. Like, there was so much that I was like, "I don't know what they're talking about at all." And you kinda have to accept that. Like, that's your starting point. You don't know anything, and you gotta accept that and be okay with that, and be proud about that. Like, don't be scared, like, "Man, I don't know anything." Like, be proud, like, "Hey, I don't know, but I'm pushing myself. I'm putting myself out there. Like, I'm learning." So asking questions is a big thing. And then also believing in yourself. I think that while you're going through it, there are definitely going to be times where you're going to think, I don't think that I can do this. I don't know if I'm cut out for this. I know I had a lot of those moments where I'll be doing an assignment and I'll get to a problem. I'd be like, this is it. This is the problem. I'm not going to get past. I'm about to get kicked out. I did all this work, but it wasn't enough. And then at those times, I would just like go for a walk. Just go for a walk and come back. So my advice is if you're at a problem that's really challenging, you have to keep telling yourself, I am gonna figure it out. I am gonna figure it out. There's always gonna be that voice that tells you this is it. You're not gonna figure it out, but you have to push back or find people around you to help you push back too in those moments where it might be hard for you to believe in yourself. Find other people, a trusted friend or someone who can say, "No, like, you could do this. Try one more day." I remember I had a friend and I told her, I was like, "Do not let me quit this program." I don't know if I'm gonna make it there, but do not let me quit this program no matter what I say. Like, don't let me quit it. So that was a lot of it in the program for me. Like, don't give up, just try one more day. And then by the time you do that, you're in a much better place. You're like, okay, well, I can do another day. I can do another day. So, reaching out for help, believing in yourself, and continuing to move forward. I think that's been a big lesson for me, where some days it's gonna feel like you're not gonna get where you wanna be, but you gotta put those thoughts behind you and just keep taking another step forward. Even if it feels silly at the time or like it's not gonna matter later on, you're gonna thank yourself. Like 3 months later, you're gonna be like, "Oh, I'm so grateful that I took that step forward, that I kept filling out that paperwork, that I asked for help, that I rose my hand, that I told so and so this and that, that I reached out, that I kept Googling, whatever it is. You're gonna be happy later that you did. So reaching out for help, believing in yourself, and keep moving forward.
I definitely pictured you, number one, when you say you didn't like asking questions in general for life, like just driving on the street and you got like all kind of lights coming up on your dashboard. You're like, I don't know what the hell that means. I'm just gonna keep going and I'm not gonna ask anybody. Wow, these
I'll
lights
figure it
are
out.
huh?
He said, "Yeah, like I'll just figure it out. I'll figure it out."
Hey, but you know what? I think is really important because a lot of times people have that fear of like looking stupid or feeling stupid by raising their hand, asking questions, especially when you're in a new job. You're like you kind of want to blend in, and you don't want
Mm,
people to feel like, yo, why is she even in here? Like she's asking like basic
yeah.
questions that she should know the answer to. But I think it's important to like get past that, acknowledge where you're at and be confident that hey, you're gonna figure this thing out as you go, like you said. So it seems like everything is mental, really, at the end of the day like, having that
I
mental
think
toughness.
so. I would say so. The mental is very important because you are gonna feel stupid and you are gonna feel like they're thinking, "Oh, she shouldn't be here. She doesn't know anything." And if you let yourself believe that, that will become your reality. You don't know anything and you don't belong here. But if you can believe that you are bringing value to the place that you're at and you're bringing value to yourself, like that's really what's important too, is how you feel about yourself. And if you can be proud of your work at the end of the day, that's what matters. Like what other people are thinking about you, that doesn't matter. This is your life and your journey and your learning experience. So you're digging deep, not for others, but for yourself, right? To become who you were meant to be. And to do that, you have to push past what other people think about you.
Nice. I love that. I love it. Hey, so let's talk about when you transition from being an employee of Catalyte to being an employee of Bloomberg. Like, how did that conversation go? I'm imagining that was pretty exciting, seeing that, like, hey, they actually like me, they love me, they want me to stick around. So, kind of walk me through that or walk us through that journey of going from a Catalyte employee to getting hired on at Bloomberg.
Sure. So my contract was a year long. So I knew I was going to be at Bloomberg as an apprentice for at least a year. And I also knew that it was a 1 year with the opportunity to convert. So I knew at the end of the year, we were going to have this discussion of, am I going to stay or am I going to go? And it's two ways. It's two ways. Like if they offer you the job and you don't want it, it's not like Catalyte or Bloomberg would have forced me, like, you have to stay. So
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to walk away if I wanted to, but pretty early on, I knew I liked Bloomberg. I knew that it was a good job and that I was on a good team. It was my first real engineering team, but I could just tell, like, I'm on a good team, and I would ask people around the office too, like, what their experience was and their journeys, how does this compare? And a lot of people would say that Bloomberg is a really good place to work, as an engineer. And so the, experience of converting, right? So you're there for a year, and it's always in the back of your mind, like, "Am I gonna be hired at the end of this?" And through probably by the summer, um, that's when I really started to, like, stress out about it a little bit. Like, "Okay, it's summer. I only have a few more months to go. No one said anything yet." But at the same time, I felt like I was doing a really good job. My managers told me I was doing a good job, and I would ask for feedback very regularly. Like, "Is there anything I can improve on?" I've never seen someone in this position before, so I don't exactly know, like, where to rate myself. I don't know where I am, if I'm doing a good job, if I'm falling behind. I just hadn't seen someone do this before. And they would always assure me like, "No, you're doing great." Like, "Okay, I guess I just have to take their word for it and keep moving." Really, they didn't tell me officially until, like, a couple of weeks before my contract ended. So,
I would
I
have been
but I
so
like,
stressed.
I know, right? But I had that feeling, like, by the fall, I guess, where I was like, "I did my best here." Like, I laid everything on the table, I did my best. If I don't convert, it's just because it wasn't meant for me. Because I did all that I could do. And my manager every once in a while would kinda throw out hints, like, about next year, but mention me, right? So I'd be like, "Oh, okay, so you see me being here next year." So they would throw out hints, but they didn't tell me until a few weeks, maybe a month maybe a month before my contract ended. Like, "Hey, we had a really great time with you this year, and we want you to stay." And then from there, it's pretty standard paperwork, just like normal hiring stuff, and then I just kinda rolled right on. So because you're an apprentice there, it's not like a huge transition. I'm still doing the same job with a few more, responsibilities, but so it's a pretty easy transition.
Great. Yeah, like I said, I would have been stressed out. Like, I'm looking at the thing, I'm like, "Yo, do I need to be applying to other jobs?" Like, y'all gonna have to tell me something, like, don't be leaving me till a month before and then being like, "Yeah, we're excited to have you back. Come on." But I'm happy it worked out for you in the end. Let's talk about your job at Bloomberg. We didn't really talk much about it. What do you do at Bloomberg? Because when I think of Bloomberg, I think of, like, the stock market, I think of, like, the Bloomberg channel. So what do you actually do at Bloomberg?
Right. And those are all parts of Bloomberg, the things you just mentioned. But what I do specifically, so I work for Bloomberg Industry Group, and they sell a few different products, and the product I work on is called BGov. So I work in Bloomberg Government, and we sell a product. There's 2 sides to it, a government affairs side and a government contracting side. And this product is a collection of a lot of great up-to-date data that we're presenting to our users to help them in their day-to-day, basically, whether they're looking for government contracts or whether they're working like they're on the staff of a member of Congress and they need information right away. They need to keep up with certain things. It also includes like there's news, there's you can get alerts. There's a lot going on, but our users, they really like it. So I started working on the government affairs product. So I was doing things like when I first started, I was doing very small things. Like I remember my first ticket because we use the Scrum Agile methodology. So my first story that I picked up was just to change the word BGov to all caps. It was like a lowercase BGov, and I just had to change to all caps. And I remember that took me like 2 days, but just because I was trying to like get onto the system, like there's a lot going on. But then that, I've grown since then. I'm doing more now. But every once in a while, it'll be something like, oh, we need you to change this letter to a capital, right?
Yeah.
But no, so what I did was a lot of adding new features. My team was kind of focused on adding new features to the website and more like personalization features. So that's kind of where I focus most of my time. I did mostly front end work, a couple of back end tickets here and there, but we had people on our team who were kind of like back end experts. So they handled a lot of the back end stuff. So a few back end, a couple of cloud things, but mostly front end work, much more complicated than just capitalizing things. But I say that just to remind myself how much I've grown since starting. And then now I work on the government contracting side of things, and it's still doing primarily front end work right now as we're working on a big initiative and it's a lot of fun stuff. It's a lot of fun stuff that I haven't seen before. So I'm really enjoying it. But yeah, I guess to sum it up, mostly front end work.
That's great. And, do you guys use React?
No, we actually use Vue,
Okay.
which is still like a JavaScript based language, but it's actually not. Moving from React to Vue wasn't like a huge transition, and so I was able to pick it up fairly quickly, but I didn't know that they were using Vue until I got hired, basically, and then I had a few weeks to ramp up before picking up tickets.
I'm glad you mentioned that. And then also even the part about your first ticket being just changing the capitalization of the letters, because I mean, it shows the growth, right? I was looking on Glassdoor.com and I saw the base salary for a software engineer at Bloomberg is roughly 130,000. Is that like in the right ballpark range for what people can expect in terms of software engineering salary once they get out of a program and get on site at the client?
In general, like across the board, I would say once you get out on client, you're probably looking at least $100,000, especially these days. I think that you should, ask for that, if the time comes, like, ask for at least that, just because that's kind of what the market is right now.
Did you ever have to negotiate your salary or negotiate anything during that transition, or you're like, "Hey,
Yeah,
let's" oh, you did? Okay, how did that process go?
and you did. So the hiring process is, very much just like a normal hiring process as if you were to apply to Bloomberg or any job. And
Yeah.
then they, ask you to fill out an application, ask you what you're looking for salary, and then, give you an offer. So I would say it's very similar to just your average, not your average, but your typical hiring process. My experience was good. Um, Really all I did was just say a number that I was looking for, and then they came back with an offer, and I liked the offer. So
Okay.
I the offer. So for me, it wasn't like a back and forth. I didn't feel like they were trying to lowball me or anything. I remember I asked my mom, like, "I don't know what to ask for," and she told me, because I remember I was gonna ask in hindsight, I was gonna ask for something pretty low in hindsight, but for me, I thought it was high. And
Okay.
she told me, she was like, one thing I've learned is that if you're comfortable with what you're asking, then you're not asking enough, and you need to ask for a bit more." I said, "Okay." So I went up a little bit, and she's like, "Are you comfortable?" I'm like, "I think I still am comfortable." She's like, "Okay, then, take it up a little bit more until you get to the place where you're a little uncomfortable." Because a lot of times we're worth more than what we think we are, especially when it comes to salaries. And so it's like the worst they can do is say no and give you a counter offer, right? So I thought that was good advice, and I followed it and it worked out.
One last question to kinda put a bow on your engineering journey. I'm curious, how does the actual experience of being a software engineer and what you do on the day to day, how does that actually match up to what you expected or anticipated before starting a Catalyte program?
I honestly didn't know what to expect at all. I really just looking back, like I really just jumped in.
Like,
Just
"I'm doing it."
yeah, just trusting that it was the right a move for me. I knew that I was interested in, like, languages. I've always liked puzzles. I've always liked figuring stuff out and problem solving. So I thought that it would encompass all of those things, and that it does. It does. Every day, maybe not every single day, but a lot of times it feels like I'm trying to solve a puzzle, you're definitely solving problems, and so that part of it is pretty accurate, and I'm glad about that. I would say the day to day is probably totally different than what I expected, but that's just because I didn't know how software engineers work. I used to wonder why they called them engineers because I was like, "What? Like, what?" And then, when you think of engineer, you're thinking of like an architect or someone building something. And I didn't really get that until now that I'm in it. I see that it is a disciplined practice. You are building things, and there are best practices, and there are architectural structures that you want to follow. Like, there's a lot more to it than I thought. So I don't remember my expectations totally, but I can say that, well, maybe because I didn't have any expectations, but it exceeded my expectations. Uh, I feel like I'm talking about this like it's like fairy tale, like everyone do it, it's the best. I don't know everyone's experience. I'm sure not every, experience is positive out there, but for me, it's been a really good move, and I really like it. And if you like being challenged, if you like problem solving, if you like just learning in general, as well as working with people. I think before doing it, I thought I wasn't gonna have to work with anyone. I was just gonna be me and my computer, my headphones, just like in my room. And that's not accurate at all. I work with people every single day. But I'm happy about that because I'm very social. So if you like working with people, if you like being on a team, I think it's a good thing to look into.
Nice. Before I let you go, let people know how they can find you, follow you, keep up with your journey and everything that you're doing. And you're like an unofficial Catalyte ambassador at this point, so somebody's probably gonna hit you up at some point. But let them know like where they can find you and keep up with you and all that good stuff as well.
It's funny, I do feel like an unofficial ambassador. They don't even know that I'm doing this, but I just like them so much that I'm like, "I gotta tell people about you guys." Um, if you wanna follow me, okay, you can follow me at so my Instagram is ALUXISS, Alexis. I I don't really post much stuff there. Every once in a while, I'm trying to get more back. I'm trying to get back into it a little bit more, but that's where you can follow me just like socially, but professionally, you can follow me on LinkedIn at Catherine Alexis Booker. If you want to keep up, or if you have questions too, like Andrew said, I'm like an unofficial Catalyt ambassador. I'll definitely answer your questions if anyone has questions about the cycle or how to get into it, or I don't know, just about anything. I'm just that type of person. Like I'll help you out if I can. So
Nice. I like that, Alexis. I appreciate that too. Thank you for all that, like the advice, the wisdom, the feedback about your experience through the Catalyte program and working at Bloomberg. It's all been extremely beneficial. And I look forward, like I said before, I look forward to seeing your journey and continue to see you grow through this process.
thank you. Thanks, Andrew. I enjoyed being here today. I hope it was beneficial. I really appreciate what you're doing too, helping people see that there are options out there. There's a lot of options out there, but sometimes we don't know where to look. So I think it's awesome what you're doing. I hope that you keep it up. It's been really great getting to know you as well. Really proud of the work that you're doing in our community. So it's been
Thanks.
really awesome to meet you.
I appreciate that. And it is beneficial. Like this is gonna be extremely helpful.
Right.
Like some of the most popular videos I have right now are all about tech apprenticeship programs and people saying, I don't have enough experience. I can't compete with somebody with a computer science degree. So this is like really important for them to hear your story about not having a technical background at all and still making it work and getting into a tech apprenticeship program. So it'll be a big blessing for a lot of people. So thanks for coming on. And for you guys who have been watching this episode, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Make sure if you haven't already that you subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also find us on all social media platforms at cuSTEM Journeys. This has been another great episode. This one featuring Catherine Alexis Booker. And we'll be back next week with another great episode. Take care.